Welcome to the theater. Take a seat, grab some popcorn, and get ready for another horror movie double bill. This is Friday Night Fratricide.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to Friday Night Fratricide. You are here with the Happy Brothers, and it's time for a spooky double bill. I'm excited to get stuck into this brand new podcast.
I'm very excited.
And chat about some of our favourite horror films, and some new horror films, and just horror films in general.
Yeah.
It's definitely a love near and dear to both our hearts. We spoke about a bit our history with horror films and stuff in the introductory episode, but here we are getting stuck in with our first themed episode, and that theme is Asylum. Dun dun dun.
Asylums are like a classic for a spooky setting. This is like abandoned asylums, haunted asylums.
There's a wealth of movies to choose from.
There is.
There really is. And I think we've picked some interesting ones.
I think we've got some good ones.
Possibly not the most common or well-known films.
Maybe not.
For our first episode here. But there you go. That's fine. We'll lead off with the unknown and introduce some people to some new films. We've spoke about it a bit in the introductory episode, but we're excited to just come and chat about some horror films. The format of this is kind of going to be probably refined along the way and how we handle it all, but for the time being, we'll speak about both the movies that we've had a watch of this week, see how they compare with our chosen theme, and then give them a good old rating. There's nothing wrong with giving them a good old rating. We don't really need to, but I like marking how we think, because then you come back to it in a couple of years and you're like, I gave that a 3 stars. Man, it didn't deserve 3 stars. That's a 1 star now.
Yeah.
It's good to put a marker on things. So, will we get kicked? Will we get kicked off? Will we kick off?
We'll kick off. We'll get started.
We'll kick off. Do you want to?
We'll dive in.
Take it away with our first movie of the night.
Our first movie of the night is Asylum from 1972.
How apt.
Very fitting for the Asylum setting, for the theme. Asylum was made in 1972 by Amicus, who are probably best well known for doing the Tales from the Crypt film, which came out right around the same time. And they became very well known for movies in that style of this sort of the anthology horror, where you had this you would have a wraparound introducing 4 or 5 different characters, and each one of them has their own spooky story going on. Either it's a recurring dream that they've been having, or it's like a vision of the future, or in this case, all of the characters are patients within an asylum, and they are all being interviewed and explaining the stories that are, why they are there, what it is that drove them insane and led them to be committed into the asylum. So the film kicks off with the character of Dr. Martin, who is about the closest thing that we've got to a protagonist in this film, I guess, who is interviewing for a job as the new head doctor. And he finds out that the previous head doctor, Dr. Starr, went insane and was committed to the asylum, and he is now one of the patients upstairs. And his task is to interview the patients and figure out which one is actually Dr. Starr.
It's like a murder mystery night.
It is.
With all your friends.
Yeah. He needs to figure out which one is the killer. I mean, they're kind of several of them are killers.
I know, they're all pretty,
so he needs to find out which one is actually Dr. Starr living in a split personality, I suppose.
It's kind of, it's definitely how I took it when he first, when the head doctor of the current head doctor of the asylum, it kind of, he implies that he's kind of split personality, and he's now, Dr. Starr has become someone else.
and he's aided only by Max, who is the orderly in the asylum, played by Jeffrey Belden, who I absolutely love. I love Jeffrey Belden. He's fantastic in everything. I don't know if I recognize him. He was in one of the other Amicus films that I know that you like, The House That Dripped Blood.
Who is he in The House That Dripped Blood?
He's in the John Pertwee segment. He's the guy that runs the antique shop that sells him the cape that turns him into a vampire. Yeah. And he's really camp.
Oh, yeah.
He's very good. He was in a couple of episodes of Doctor Who as well.
See, that's one thing I really love doing when we're watching these old English horror film anthologies. You got to play Spot the Doctor Who actor.
Yeah. He was in Creature from the Pit, the Tom Baker story from the late 70s.
Yeah, it's not great.
Not great. But he also was the long-term partner of, and I wrote his name down and I would double check, Alan Rao, who was in several episodes of Doctor Who. He was in the Moonbase, Time Warrior, Horror of Fang Rock, and Full Circle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you sure you don't want to do a Doctor Who podcast?
I do a little bit. Anyway, sorry. I'm just getting distracted because I know you like Doctor Who and I like playing Spot the Doctor Who actor, like you say. So, so we kick off with the first patient, who is Bonnie, who tells the story of her and her lover, Walter, who is married, trying to get rid of Walter's wife, Ruth. Ruth is a proponent of... They're very careful not to call it voodoo, which is good, but it's some sort of African witchcraft, I suppose.
Yeah, the husband, he kind of is very dismissive of it, and he's quite sort of flippant about it, and he says it's like, oh, it's mumbo jumbo, it's all this sort of this African magic nonsense kind of thing.
Yeah,
but yeah.
And then, he, in order to get her out of the way so that he can run off with his side piece, he murders the wife, Ruth, with an axe, chops her up into pieces, wraps those pieces up in butcher paper, and then sticks them in the chest freezer in the basement. And then all of those body parts come back to life.
Yes.
Separately, reanimated. They start crawling around. We get the head rolling across the floor.
It's actually really pretty creepy.
It is, yeah. You've got like the hands crawling out, like the severed arm. And, like it does look a little bit silly. Some of the special effects aren't great here. I think the head's really good. There's like a shot of the head at the top of the cellar stairs, and you can see it breathing, like the paper around the mouth
in and out,
kind of moving in and out when it's a little bit damp, and it's sort of it adds that little bit of realism and makes it quite creepy. And the hands, I think, work quite well. But there's like legs. There's like a severed leg that's not doing anything. It's kind of just like stretching
just like kicking,
on the ground. And Bonnie shows up to meet Walter, having killed Ruth, finds Walter dead, stuffed in the freezer, and then has to fend off all of the body parts.
Yep.
And then in the end has to fend off a hand crawling across her face with an axe. She winds up hacks off of her face and winds up slashing her own face.
Yeah, it's really quite ugly.
It is, yeah.
Not like she's like the situation. The idea is quite, that she's having to, it's pretty horrible. Get herself in the face. Yeah, I really like that we had when Bonnie's introduced, they kind of go into her room and she starts telling her story. You only ever see her from behind, so you don't see her face. And then we get through the story, and then of course the story ends with her, trying to get the hand off, and then you get this reveal that she's got these big scars down the side of her face. I was going to say, actually, this film, like, it is exceptionally shot. Oh yeah, it is incredibly well. You go into like a 70s horror film, and you're kind of like, you probably don't expect a huge amount, and especially like this was the first time I'd watched it this week. I've seen a couple of the other ones, like what is the Trilogy of Terror and House of Dripped Blood and all those style films, and they're great, but they're not like, I wouldn't call them particularly beautiful or particularly well shot. This one though was so gorgeous, like the way the camera was positioned, and just the framing of Bonnie particularly. You don't see her from in front when you walk into the room, and I was really impressed. I was really impressed with it. It was directed by Roy Ward Baker, who did a lot of the Hammer films. He did one of the Hammer Draculas, and he did Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, right, and Quatermass from the Pit. Quatermass from the Pit, which is a really good one. That's a good film. Quatermass from the Pit.
Yeah, so like I enjoy the first segment. I think the first two segments are probably the best ones.
I was going to say, yeah, I think so too.
The first two are
Yeah.
probably the best. So like the first one I really enjoy. This is the only one I should mention. These are based on short stories by Robert Bloch,
Oh, are
who wrote Psycho.
Oh, I didn't realize they were based on.
They're based on short stories, as were The House That Dripped Blood. They were all,
I didn't
all,
know
all
that either.
Robert Bloch.
Oh, there you go.
All short stories by him. Yeah. This is the only one from this film that I've actually read the short story of. I've got a couple of books of his short stories, and they're very good. They're very like fun reads because they're quite short. Like even for short stories, they're like 5-6 pages long, and they're really easy to read. And this is a really good, good story. And yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's definitely quite goofy. The kind of the severed limbs.
A little bit, but I think there is an air of creepiness to them. I think particularly when you first see the head, when it rolls out of the kitchen, is really quite like unsettling. And then, as you say, the bit when it's at the top of the stairs and you can see it breathing. Like, okay, yeah, this is like it's a 70s horror film. It's not gonna scare you probably, but it's still a bit like
it's a bit creepy.
Ooh, yeah.
The second one, the second story, I think. Probably the best. Like I say, the first two are certainly the best, rather than the first two are better than the last two. But I think the second one's probably my favorite. The Weird Tailor, which is all about Bruno, who is a tailor from somewhere in Europe.
Don't know. He's got a banging
Germany.
beard.
He does. He has a beard that it's like sideburns that are like shaved right like halfway down the cheeks. Yeah.
Rocking that.
Yeah. He is struggling a little bit financially. He's struggling to pay his rent, pay his bills, because he's not getting much business in his tailoring shop. Until Mr. Smith arrives, the mysterious Mr. Smith, played by Peter Cushing.
The wonderful Peter Cushing.
We love Peter Cushing.
The indomitable Peter Cushing.
His entry is incredible. I really love how he's silhouetted in the doorway, and he's just got his great like voice. He's so well spoken, and he's such a fantastic character. He comes in and reveals that he wants Bruno to make him a suit from this very interesting exotic material that's like glowy and pearlescent, and it changes color, and they've got some weird camera effect over
I really
it,
like
so
how they did it.
Really,
It was quite subtle, but it was nice.
Looks mystical.
Yeah.
And once and of course there are all these stipulations. You need to follow these instructions that I've written down. I've copied out of a book. You need to follow them perfectly, and you're only allowed to work on it at night because the stars are going to be aligned and all of this stuff. And he takes the suit to him at the end of the week once he's finished making it, and it's revealed that the suit is for his son who has died and is in a casket in his living room, and the suit is going to be used to bring him back from the dead.
It's never revealed though.
I guess not really.
It's not revealed.
It doesn't reveal it exactly. He just says that it's a form of magic.
It's for him, and he is dead.
And he is dead. And Bruno refuses to give him the suit. And when Mr. Smith pulls a gun, they struggle, and he is forced to kill Mr. Smith in self-defense.
Poor Mr. Smith.
I know.
Just wanted to save his son.
Just wanted to save his son. And then when he returns home with the suit and takes it back to his wife, he's stolen this book of magic. He flicks through the pages, and you can see there's like a skeleton, and then the suit is on it, and then it kind of the body sort of reforms. And at this point, we realize that his wife has put the suit on Otto, the mannequin that is in the tailor shop window. When he and his wife start to struggle, when she finds out that Mr. Smith has been killed, she tries to call the police. They start fighting, and Otto suddenly springs to life. His hands, like he does this great, like his hands sort of like go into claws, and he starts like hobbling over. He kind of like moves from side to side.
Like
He's got
a mannequin,
like stiff legs. And I think it's quite creepy. And we get, I mean, you mentioned when you started watching it, we love a little bit of Mazursky. Over the top, and we've got like this great like classical music, dramatic classical music as he comes to life and starts moving over and tries to strangle Bruno.
It's pretty creepy. He's got the sort of makeup is it's layered on really, really thick. It's like sort of wax effect almost all over his face. It's very clearly someone underneath the mannequin. It's not like it's not like an actual like plastic mask or anything, but it looks really. It looks sort of uncanny valley, that style of just unsettling.
Yeah, I really like it. I think this is this is probably my second one. I think a lot of it down to Peter Cushing just being
he's very
so
good in
great.
it. Actually, he kind of goes from this very mysterious suit buyer coming in off the street. I thought he was going to end up playing like the devil or something.
Yeah.
And then it goes to him being quite an emotional father. He just wants his son back.
Yeah.
And he plays it really well for like a 10-minute segment, if that.
Yeah.
There's a lot in it
There,
for him to do,
There was some statistic about it. Like, this whole film was shot in a very short period of time. Amicus, during this time, they were making quite a few of these films. They were putting out 2 a year. It was quite a small production team, very low budget. They would film it in very quick succession.
Mm-hmm.
I think Peter Cushing was actually only on for 2 days. So,
Wow.
like, he's only... That will show you how, like, small his part is, but, like, he really steals it. Like, he only shot 2 days worth of material, or, like, was on set for 2 days,
Wow.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's a good one. The third segment, I think, is probably the weakest. I'm not really a fan of it. It's called Lucy Comes to Stay. Where we've got the character of Barbara returns home from staying somewhere. I think implied that it's another hospital or another asylum, possibly. She's in the care of her brother and her nurse, and they make reference to a friend of hers who is a bad influence called Lucy, and we don't really know who Lucy is. And then Lucy suddenly turns up, played by Britt Ekland.
Yep.
Quite famous, another famous actress from around this time. She was in The Wicker Man. Around the same time here.
Was she not a James Bond?
She was a James Bond. She was
a Bond girl.
Bond girl in, I can't remember which one it was.
Spy Who Loved Me, maybe?
Could have been. It was one of the Roger Moore ones, I think.
Yeah.
And yes, Lucy kills George and the nurse, poisons the tea, and then stabs George with scissors, and then stabs the nurse at the top of the stairs and pushes her down.
Very psycho-esque.
It is. I was actually thinking about that because, I mean, obviously, written by Robert Bloch as well. So Psycho was written in the late 50s. It was like 58, 59. This short story was written, I think, 52 or 53. So I'd be really interested to know if this was like some of the themes that he did in this short story, like the kind of the infirm character stuck in the house with what turns out to be a split personality.
Yeah.
Maybe it seems like it's a bit of an obvious twist that Lucy is actually a figment of Barbara's imagination. They're actually the same person. That's, carried over into Psycho, even down to specific things like the poisoning the tea, or like the character coming up to the top of the stairs and having the sudden like character coming around the corner and stabbing them.
Yeah, the influence is definitely there.
I think there's like there's an overlap in some of the things that are done there. So I'd be interested to know if there was actually a connection. Yeah, I think the story's not great. Unfortunately,
I was kind of enjoying the uncertainty of whether or not Lucy was part of her imagination or not, because up until the end, like when they go back into the asylum room, the main storyline, she is a separate person.
Yeah,
it's never shown. She's only ever around Barbara. Yeah, but it's never really kind of implied that they are the same character until the end, when she turns around to Dr. Martin in the hospital and says, "Can't you see Lucy? She's here with me now." And then in like the mirror, turns around in the mirror and Lucy's sitting there instead. Yeah, and I was kind of like, that kind of ruins it for me, because I'm like, well, I mean, it was obvious that she was imaginary. Yeah, but I would like it not to have been confirmed. Yeah, I would like to having it a bit
more ambiguous, having maybe like everyone else is convinced that she's just a figure of Barbara's imagination, but Barbara and we as the audience believe that maybe she's a ghost or something, and like everyone's just trying to say like, no, she's not real, but we're actually seeing her, and maybe she is, maybe she isn't. Would have been an interesting angle to explore there. I like the fashion in this one. It's the I think Barbara and Britt Ekland both in their like very 70s suits is quite fun. Then and then at the end we move on to the final segment, which is the only one that's not really done in like a flashback. It actually takes place
part
within
of the story,
asylum. We're introduced to Dr. Byron, who's played by Herbert Lom, who is quite a well-known, I think he was Czech. I could be wrong about that. European actor, and quite well known for playing like villains, quite sort of spooky characters, who is... He's obsessed with making little dolls, little replicas of people. He claims that they've got like fully developed organ systems inside these little dolls and everything, and they've all got sculpted heads to look like real people, and he believes that he can transfer his consciousness into these dolls and make them come to life. And he has one of himself. It's a perfect little replica of himself that he tries to beam his consciousness into so he can get revenge on Dr. Rutherford, the current or like temporary head of the hospital, because he was the one who had him committed after they used to work together. And then he does exactly that. He the little toy robot man
transfers his mind into it.
Starts waddling along, and he goes down the dumbwaiter and into the office and stabs Dr. Rutherford with a scalpel. This is definitely where the film suffers from having a lack of budget, because I think the dolls look really silly.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think the dolls were meant to be more human looking?
I would have expected, because they don't. It's so weird that he says like, oh, they're perfect replicas of people.
I know.
And they're like toy robots.
They look like the sort of classic square robots.
Yeah.
But with a human head.
With a human head and like arms, sort of humanish arms. So it's really weird that they do that. And I think it looks quite silly. I think they don't look very spooky because they move so slowly.
The heads are pretty creepy.
They're just like little like clockwork. Yeah, the heads do work quite well. They're like kind of sculpted clay heads. And I was thinking that obviously these are some films that came out quite a bit later, but like I don't know if you've seen Puppet Master, but it has quite a lot of like stop motion of these little dolls, and or like Tales from the Hood. There's a segment in Tales from the Hood where it's dolls of slaves,
right,
in an old plantation house that come to life to kill the racist owner. And like the stop motion of those dolls, they are like kind of humanoid dolls, works really, really well. And I think if we'd had a good budget, maybe even gotten like Ray Harryhausen or something to do.
I was
like
wondering if that's what we were going to see. When he's talking about bringing the dolls to life and blah blah blah. I was like, are we going to see a nice sort of stop motion sequence through the hospital? But no,
unfortunately we don't.
They're like sort of wind up.
They're like little clockwork toy robots, which I think unfortunately look a bit silly. But I do really like, at the end, after Dr. Martin sees Dr. Rutherford being stabbed, he gets the doll and he throws it onto the ground, and then he stamps on it, and it breaks open, and it's got human guts on the inside. And then we see Dr. Byron upstairs screaming in pain, and when he rushes back up, we don't see him, unfortunately.
We don't see it. I was waiting to see. I was like, oh my god, that's pretty brutal.
His dead body's been completely crushed, completely obliterated. And then then we get our little outro. We get the very dramatic reveal. They run into Max, the orderly. They go into his office to try and call for the police, and that's when they find another dead body in Max's room, which turns out to be the real Max, the orderly. And Jeffrey Belden was actually Dr. Starr the whole time, and he killed Max. And then he snaps and he laughs maniacally and strangles Dr. Martin with a stethoscope.
Yeah.
And I love Jeffrey Belden so much.
It's so
He's
campy.
So great.
His laugh in that scene is so wild.
It is.
There's no way to describe it.
It's like just maniacal. It's fantastic. I really love him so much. And then the film ends with another doctor arriving for a job interview at the asylum. The door is answered by Jeffrey Belden, again pretending to be Max the orderly, and he makes a comment about we need to close the door to keep the draft out, just like Dr. Starr used to say, which is something that he said at the start of the film. And kind
of looks into the camera.
Camera as he closes the door, and then we get some more Mazursky at the end. The night on Bald Mountain kicks up as the credits roll, and I really like the ending. I think it's good. It's a bit silly, but like one of the things about the ending, the wraparound you mentioned last week in our little introductory episode, a film that you watched quite young that really spooked you, was Dead of Night, which Milton Subotsky, who was one of the founders of Amicus, one of the producers on all their films, including this one, cited as his favorite film and was a big influence for him and why he got into anthology horror. And I think there's an element of like the sort of Dead of Night like time loop. You know, the film, the start of Dead of Night and the end, he wakes up at the beginning, goes through the whole process of the film, and then at the end wakes up again. The whole thing was a dream. Then he goes back to the house, and it's the start of the film again. Yeah, and it's that sort of cyclical. It's in a loop, and I think Asylum is kind of doing something similar.
There's a similar idea with the different doctors.
The new doctor shows up, and it's kind of the kicking off again. Yeah, and I really like that.
I think
I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's definitely got its strengths. I think the acting, Dr. Martin, I think was great. Yeah, as the sort of the staple holding the plot together. I think he was really like believable, and I liked his sort of impassioned speech to Dr. Rutherford.
Dr. Rutherford in the wheelchair
when he's talking about like how we should be treating patients as people and not as patients, and I thought that was really kind of, I don't know, progressive almost for like the 70s.
Yeah, Dr. Rutherford's convinced that they just need to be locked up and
lobotomized.
Yeah, he talks about lobotomizing them.
So I liked Dr. Martin. I thought he was a good, as you say, sort of protagonist, quote unquote. Yeah. But I thought, as good as the first two stories were, I think all four of them were pretty predictable.
Yeah, they are. Definitely.
Even from like the first one, I knew that as soon as he hacked her up, that body's going to come back to life. Yeah. The second one, as soon as he brought in the suit and he talked about it being for his son, but he can't see his son, I was like, he's back. He's going to make a suit for his son to bring him back to life. Yeah. Called it. Yeah. The third one, with Lucy, I was a wee bit unsure. I was like, they kind of played it as, is she a figment? I knew she probably wasn't real, but I was kind of hoping that she was, and it was going to be a really sort of curveball. Yeah. And then turns out she wasn't. I was like, well, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think maybe this is like looking back with other films that have done that similar plot twist, even something like Fight Club or whatever, the reveal of like they're actually the same person. Yeah. I feel like it's quite predictable. I don't know if it necessarily would have been at the time, especially not maybe in the 50s when the short story was written. Possibly not. Possibly not.
So, yeah, I try and give it the benefit of the doubt, but like definitely looking at it today, it's quite predictable.
It's agree. A little bit, but I can see its benefits for the time. Like, as I say, the camera work was incredible. Like the opening sequence with Dr. Martin going up the stairs and he's looking at all the paintings is beautifully shot. All the introductions to the patients as well, get shots in and out of the windows, and what else, like the end with the last Doctor, Byron, when he's kind of phasing in and out of the robot, we get these shots back and forward are really they're quite cool. Like it's it's definitely not I don't know what's the opposite of a gorgeous looking film.
I don't know.
A bad looking film.
It's not bad looking.
I don't I can't think of a good way to say that. It is very pleasing to watch. Just the story lacks a little bit. Yeah. It's a wee bit campy in places.
It's very campy. I like that about it, but it's very campy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
I really like it. So that's Asylum.
No, it's definitely a good watch. It's not bad by any means, and I think there are better Amicus anthologies. Yeah. Personally. Yeah. Do we want to give it a score now? Do we want to wait until the end and see how they fare?
I don't have too much of a preference for when we do it.
Well, let's just do it now.
We'll do it now.
Let's see how you rank them. Yeah.
So we'll go by stars out of 5 stars.
I think out of 5 stars. Yeah.
Out of 5 Doctor stars.
5 Doctor stars.
Boo. Yeah. So we're going out of 5 stars. I would give it a 3.5. Okay. I thought we were going to be doing out of 10, and I gave it a 7. So I'm going to backtrack that and give it a 3.5. I think definitely the special effects in some places. I think definitely with the last segment, especially, are not great. and it detracts a little bit from the film. I think some of the stories aren't amazing. Some of the writing isn't great. Like the dialogue is maybe not especially interesting. It's quite campy and quite straightforward. It's very there's not much like subtlety in any of it.
Yeah.
Or any,
subtext.
Everything's pretty straight laced. But it has some really great elements. Like you say, I think it's really well shot. I think some of the concepts for the stories are really interesting.
Yeah.
And really, like, they carry it. Some of the acting's great. I think Peter Cushing's good as always. I think Jeffrey Belden's great. I think even some of the sort of more minor characters, like the patients, like, Bruno and Bonnie right at the beginning, Dr. Starr, Dr. Rutherford, I think they're all really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the music's great.
It's
not an original
Mussorgsky,
score.
yeah.
It's like classical music. It's a lot of Mussorgsky over a few of the segments. Like you mentioned, the scene when he's going up the stairs right at the beginning, and there's the sort of ink sketches of like a man
story
going insane and
yeah.
being committed into like a sort of Victorian asylum.
Yeah.
And there's like the music over the top of that is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it kind of balances out as like a good film. I think it's definitely worth watching, but there are elements that let it down.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit more critical than you. I think I was kind of comparing it to the other Amicus films, particularly House That Dripped Blood, that I just adore. I think it's just fantastic. This one I think was maybe let down a little bit by its lack of notable actors. Possibly, the House That Dripped Blood, every single segment has an actor that you will recognize. Mm-hmm. If you've watched a movie in your lifetime, you will recognize someone in that film, Whereas here, I was kind of struggling to recognize a lot of people other than Peter Cushing. Mm-hmm. I had to Google everyone else to figure out where I knew them from. So maybe I'm being a little bit critical. That shouldn't make it a bad thing, but I think if they had a bit more notable actors, it might have been a bit more enjoyable in places. As you say, the dialogue, it's very straightforward. There's not much to it. It is beautifully shot. I think a couple of the stories are pretty creepy, and definitely like the concept, particularly the first two. I completely agree with you. The first two are easily the strongest. They are quite creepy in places, but I think the other two let them down. Mm-hmm. And just overall, I was left a wee bit like, I knew that was going to happen. It's all a wee bit predictable. So I went for a very down the middle 2.5 stars.
2.5 stars.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
2.5 stars.
It's not bad.
So it's not bad, not great. Very in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I went for.
Yeah.
So there we have Asylum.
We have Asylum.
Amicus's Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
So from one asylum to another, we're past the watershed.
We are.
We're on to our next movie of the evening, the second part of our double bill. And we are definitely going to the other extreme of asylums. This was my pick for this week, Gonjiam Haunted Asylum. It is a 2018 Korean found footage film directed by Jung Boom-sik. I do apologise if I get the pronunciations wrong. I am not 100% on pronunciations. A lot of the actors in this are fairly well known in Korea, but they're all sort of drama and drama films, drama TV series that I'm really not a fan of and do not recognise at all. So I'm not going to list through the list of actors, mainly because I'm also afraid that I'll get names wrong, and I feel bad if I do that. So
the only one that I recognise
is
the main guy.
Wee Ha-jun.
Yeah.
Who plays Ha-jun. They all have the same first names apart from one character who plays an Asian American woman and has an American first name. But Charlotte. Mm-hmm. She plays who's played by Moon Yi-woon. Yeah. But I don't think she is American Korean.
No, I wouldn't. I don't know.
But,
I didn't.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, so Ha-jun played the detective in Squid Game.
Yeah.
Was obviously probably out of every single film from this entire cast's backlog, Squid Game I think is probably the most, possibly the only Western recognized series. I couldn't really see any others that I would even have noticed.
I can't say I know an awful lot of Korean Korean things.
Korean horror films. I'm big on
a handful of them.
The sort of dramas and thriller movies and stuff I'm really not big on at all. So I didn't really recognize a lot of them. But yeah, Ha-jun plays the detective in Squid Game, if you've seen that. And if you've not, I would recommend it 'cause it's pretty good.
It is pretty good.
It's not much of a horror film, unless it's not sort of consider the horrors of capitalism.
Yeah. The real monster.
The real monster. So Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum, takes place. It is set in Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital, which is actually a real place. Mm-hmm. It is supposedly one of the most haunted places in the world. The one that keeps getting cited as CNN's 7 or 8 scariest places in the world, most haunted locations in the world. And it is on that list. So it is a real place. I don't know if there's any truth to the fact that it's haunted or not. Who knows? But the film was shot in the National Maritime Museum in Busan.
Right.
It wasn't shot in the hospital because they couldn't get permission to shoot in it. And they also got in a bit of trouble when they decided to make the film because the owner of the asylum thought that it would negatively affect the sale if he was trying to sell the place. He tried to sue the film team, but ultimately he lost. Yeah. So whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm glad he did, because I'm glad we got this film, because I love it. I think it's amazing. It kind of takes everything good about found footage horror films and other film that everything that other horror films may have not done completely right, this one does right. Yeah. Which I just love it. So loose plot is this group of film students. I think there's sort of 3 or 4 of them. Run a YouTube channel. It's called Horror Times. I think it's called. Where they go and explore spooky places and whatnot. And they've recruited a bunch of other folk. I think they're just sort of actors or students or whatever. Yeah, they're not really anyone.
Well, there's one that Charlotte was also an influencer.
She's
doing the same
things,
but was doing kind of internationally. And there was someone who was a nursing student.
Yeah, there's someone who just wanted a bit of cash.
I think they did just hire.
They just hired a bunch of people. And they're hired to go with them to Gonjiam and basically spend the night there filming it and whatnot. So Ha-jun is the sort of leader of the group, the Squid Game guy. He takes control. They all meet up and whatnot, and then they go out to the asylum. They park sort of a mile back up the road and set up this sort of huge big base camp.
The tent.
It's this huge army tent style thing with electricity, and he's got all the laptops and everything. And that's sort of the control hub. And Ha-jun says, look, we want to get 1 million subs. That's our goal. We want to stream on whatever service, generic service. We want to get 1 million subs. We're going to send you guys in there. We're going to get some creepy footage. We're going to explore room 402, the creepy room where things happen. I think it's the ICU. Room 402.
I'm not sure.
The ICU. We have a little segment right at the start of the film where there's 2 boys who are mucking about in the asylum. They've gone to film it and stuff, and then there's a ball.
There's a ping pong ball.
Bounces out of the room and just bounce around, and they all get creeped out, and then they get dragged into the room. And
that opening scene immediately set me up to be terrified of this film, because it's the fact that it's shot in portrait. It's these 2 guys were filming on their phones. And because it's like that, it feels real. It feels like you're watching a YouTube video of people actually going out and doing this. They go down, they're walking down this corridor. There's the metal doors that have got the little slots, kind of at sort of eye level. And when it cuts to the main characters, we get a shot of someone's face, or it's really blurry. Maybe it's supposed to be someone's face, and that freaked me out.
You were texting me while you were watching it, how could you do this?
This is horrifying. This is so scary.
I love the fact that they set you up right with the two boys at the start. They set you up with that, and then there's a good 20-30 minutes where nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the setup. It's all about the main cast going to the asylum, getting set up, getting their tent, getting their equipment. Everyone gets a GoPro on their head. They've got one facing them and one facing them and one facing out. They've got handhelds and stuff. There's loads of cameras, so there's loads of different angles and everything.
Mm-hmm.
They set up GoPros in the hospital, and they all kind of they just get going, and there's a load of different angles and everything. So I love that there's so long between the first couple of minutes of the episode of the movie and the next scare. But when we do get it, it's they're going to investigate in the hospital. They find there's loads of things that are sort of meant to set up to creep you out. They find there's a dead chicken.
Yeah,
it's a sort of deformed chicken thing in a jar, room full of jars and stuff. They find a wig.
There's a wig in
the bathtub. They think it's someone in there.
Yeah.
And then we kind of find out when they're doing. It's not like a seance. They do they do it
like a ritual.
It's like a ritual thing. And we find out that the two other members of the crew, is it Seung Wook and Sung Hoon, who are the two friends of Ha-jun, who's the leader of the group, have actually been kind of mucking about behind the scenes to try and get a scare out of people, and they've been kind of manipulating it. And we're kind of okay, maybe something isn't. Or, it's a horror film. We know something is going on. But when we're watching the characters, you're like, okay, this kind of... All right. So nothing's really been happening so far. When's something going to kick in? And then we get to this room with the crates, the coffins.
Yeah.
And it's one of the main guys, one of the fake boys,
Horror Times guys,
puts his hand in first, and then starts to go, and then realize that there's nothing there, and then the is it Ji Hyun is kind of right, you guys are mucking about. She kind of figures out what's going on and puts her hand in to show that there's nothing there, and then it grabs her hand.
Yeah.
And that's
and
probably the first proper
around.
scare, and you're like, holy shit, and gets cuts and stuff on her hands. You're like, okay, right, so it's going down.
Yeah, when she pulls her arm out and she's got it's nail marks. It's like someone's grabbed her and scratched right the way down her forearm. Oh,
yeah, that's
horrible.
That's the start of it, and that's kind of it's the end of it for a lot of them. They're like, right, that's it. We're not doing it anymore. So she and Charlotte go back. They go to head back to the tent, and that's when this scene, man, I watched this alone in the dark and was like, it's not a jump scare, but it's one of those moments in the films that just sends shivers right down your spine. It's horrible. They're walking back. Ji-hyun and Charlotte are walking back to the tent, and they realize they've gone past the same marker a couple of times, and they end up getting trapped, and they don't know what's going on. And then Ji-hyun stops, and she's standing in the middle of the road, and there's a shot of her from her front camera facing her, and she's just looking down. And then all of a sudden, it's not even she doesn't look up. It's a cut. There is a jump cut to her facing the camera, and she's got pitch black eyes, and she's just muttering under her breath. Yeah. Oh my god, man! It's not a jump scare. That's the thing. Yeah. That's what makes it so much worse. Is it's not here's a scary face. It's so creepy. Just a jump to her possessed or whatever. Oh, I hate it. Yeah. But I love it so much. Yeah. It's so terrifying.
Very, very spooky.
Yeah. And then it kind of becomes, no, I don't want to say generic, but they all get picked off one by one. The different members of the group. Charlotte she makes it back to the tent, but it's not the tent. She's actually gets teleported.
She's back in the asylum
to the hospital. Everyone who is still inside the hospital sort of gradually gets pulled into different rooms, and they're all get killed and everything. It's all kind of, yeah. That's kind of the end of it for most of them. They all kind of just get grabbed. There's the scene with all of them. There's 3 of them in the water room.
Yeah, actually in room 402.
Is it in room 402?
Yeah.
And they've got the night vision camera on, and they're looking around, and it's like empty, but there's water up to like waist height.
Yeah.
And they're kind of trying to find each other, and then they're gradually getting like picked off one by one.
Yeah.
They all kind of get grabbed from behind and pulled under the water, pulled into the darkness.
Yeah. There's that shot with the night vision camera where they're looking around and they can't see anything, and then the night vision camera, you can see, like, from their kind of point of view, you can see people standing around the edges of the room.
Yeah.
With their, like, facing the walls. That was so scary. And then it keeps cutting between them, and it cuts to them, like, the kind of front facing the GoPros.
Yeah.
And every so often it'll cut to one of them, and there's hands reaching around the backs of their heads.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the camera cuts them, the hands pull back again.
Yeah.
And that freaked me out so much. And I was telling you about this last week. I was sitting, not like kind of in the middle of the room. Like, I had space behind me, and I was in my flat by myself watching this film. And when that happened, when these hands were reaching around the backs of people's heads, I got so freaked out. I had to, like, properly scrunch down on my couch, right the way down, watch the last 20-25 minutes of this film at a 45-degree angle so that the back of my head wasn't exposed. It freaked me out so much.
It's a really great scene.
Really,
it's one of those
really
scenes
creepy.
that you do watch, but like from behind your hands, you're like, oh no. And that kind of, so that takes care of most of the cast. Hajun's the last one to get got.
Yeah.
He's still back in the tent, but he kind of finally realizes, I need to go and save them. I need to go. And he runs, and he sees someone in the window. He sets up a drone, doesn't he? He sets up a drone to look around, and he sees someone in the window of the hospital. And what is it? They get like dragged out, don't they?
Yeah.
He gets like pulled down from the window, and he's like, oh, what happened there? And blah, blah, blah. And then he gets taken inside the hospital, and the same thing happens to him. Like, he's standing out the window, and then he gets pulled back in, and you're like, oh, it was him. It was him all along.
Yeah.
That wasn't obvious at all. And that's, it's so good, man. It's so creepy.
So scary. And then this is when we finally see the head of the hospital.
Oh, there's the scene with the director.
The director of the hospital.
Yes.
She like floats over. There's this shot where it's like kind of sort of his legs when he's in this room supposedly by himself, and then you see the kind of the floating legs just silently move, like floating across the room and then bumping into him. And then it cuts to his, like, the shot of his face, and her face is over his shoulder, and they're just both screaming.
Yeah.
And then it cuts. Oh God.
And then everyone claims that it's a fake.
Everyone claims that it's a fake.
on the stream. We see we see the stream cutting. It's so good, man. I love it. I think it's a really great film.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really, it's, the thing about it is it doesn't do anything new, really. It doesn't do anything that hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
Like, this is a 2018 film, so it's 5 years ago. It doesn't do anything that other similar films haven't done before. The big comparison it has is Grave Encounters.
Yeah.
The American found footage, which is set in an asylum, and they go around and creepy things happen. But that one is so boring, and the jump scares are so cheap, and you just kind of, by the end of it, you want it to end. Whereas here, you want it to end because you're too scared.
You're too scared, yeah. I think probably a very easy comparison, being a found footage horror film, is the Blair Witch Project as well. I think especially the shots when it's Charlotte and Ji-hyun leaving the asylum, trying to get back to the tent.
Yeah.
And, Ji-hyun just kind of standing by herself, facing away, not responding, and like being outside in the woods, and then it suddenly cuts to them inside the asylum, and Ji-hyun's kind of stood at the back of the room facing the wall, and she's not responding, and then there's like a naked guy, presumably a ghost of one of the patients or something, just sort of stood there. very spooky, and I thought very Blair Witchy.
It is a bit, yeah.
But like you say, maybe it's not completely original and like it's never been done before, but it's done here. Probably the best that stuff like that has ever been done.
I would certainly argue the best.
Yeah.
You know, like there's nothing that hasn't been done before, I don't think. Maybe save that shot of Ji-hyun, which I think kind of defines this film for me anyway. I like that will forever be in my memory.
Yeah.
Watching that scene.
Very spooky.
But everything else, you know, like the sort of being stuck in the room that keeps changing, and you know, you've got the night vision camera, something that's like Wreck.
Yeah.
It has the night vision camera scenes. You've got, as you say, Blair Witch is the sort of infinite forest, not being able to find your way. Obviously things like Paranormal Activity, which kind of redefined found footage. It's definitely influences there with sort of things going bump and things moving on camera and you don't know what's happening. So it's all, it's not the most original film, but I would argue that it does do it better. Each of these things, it does do it as good, if not better, than these other films.
Yeah. And
that's what makes it so great, is it's able to pull together all these different influences and make just a really phenomenal watch. And a genuinely scary watch. Like,
100%. Yeah, very scary.
I love being scared, and I hate being scared, but I love being scared. And you know what I mean when I say that. Like, it's easy to watch a horror film and to be like, that was fun. I get why it's scary, but to not actually like get your blood pumping and stuff. But when you watch a film that genuinely, like you say, like makes you want to curl up on your couch, that's how you know it's good. That's how you know it's a proper good time. So yeah, that's Gonjiam Haunted Asylum.
That's Gonjiam.
I don't have any more sort of exciting facts about it. I'm afraid. No, I used them all up with filmed in the Busan National Maritime.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know
high
that.
school. It's one that kind of flew under the radar a wee bit.
I guess so. Yeah, I think I hadn't heard of it before you recommended I watch it about 6 months ago.
Yeah,
and I didn't get around to it until
we decided to actually do it for the podcast,
I hadn't heard of it before then.
It's one that's kind of popped up recently on a lot of, like, you know, top 10 horror films. And I love I love foreign horror films. I love finding new foreign horror films, mainly because it forces you to watch them. Yeah. If it's got subtitles on, you need to watch it to know what's happening. Yeah. And if you're looking at the screen, you're also looking at the scares. Whereas in an English film, I can look away and still hear what's happening. Yeah. But not have to get jump scared, you know. Yeah. So foreign horror films definitely have this sort of different vibe that I really like. So I'm always looking for them, and this one kind of popped up at one point. I was like, oh man, this seems like right up my alley. I love found footage films. Like, I love foreign films. This is just great. Watched it and was immediately just like, yeah, I get it. I get why this is so highly praised. But yeah, very much flew under the radar a little bit, which is a shame. More people should watch it. They should. You should watch it.
Now we're recommending it. Yeah. Go and watch it. It's good.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you've not watched it, well, we've kind of just spoiled it for you if you've not seen it already.
Well, I guess that's true.
Yeah. So
I think
hopefully you watched it before listening to us talk about it.
Well, we want to. Yeah, I think we should try and announce before so people have a chance to.
We do. We put it in last week in the little introductory episode what we're going to have. Yeah. So
good. So, well, maybe ask you first. How do you feel about it? You give it a rating out of 5?
I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I would necessarily rate it incredibly highly. I gave it actually again a 3.5.
Okay.
Because I think there are elements of it that are done really, really well. I think the fact that it's not an incredibly original concept, like it's the sort of found footage going around a haunted place, is something that has been done a lot of times before. So it's not. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's not got any, particularly unique or interesting concepts there, I don't think, beyond the fact that it's being done as a live stream. I really like the fact that it's being done as a live stream and that lending an element of kind of realism to it. Even down to things like right at the beginning, it's almost like a vlog. There's shots of them. They go swimming. They go for food, and they're like having beers together and joking around with each other, and that makes it feel real.
Yeah.
And that makes it so much scarier when something supernatural happens.
Yeah.
It balanced out a good 3.5.
3.5. I'll take a 3.5.
Some of the scares were really good. I liked that it wasn't just jump scares constantly.
Yeah.
That's something that I hate, is just cheap jump scares.
They definitely don't. Even at the end. Even at the end, they don't rely on like jump scares.
They easily could have done.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But they didn't. They did it. They put the legwork in, and they made it really properly spooky.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's, and you know, I can't praise this film enough. I love it. I think it's really, really incredible. I think people should watch it. I think there are a couple of elements that let it down a little bit. One, arguably, would be the originality.
Mm-hmm.
That yes, it does do everything great, but it doesn't come up really with any ideas of its own. Whether that's a bad thing or not is kind of subjective. I personally don't mind it, but I can see that being a fair criticism of it. And the other part would be maybe the pacing. Slightly, they take maybe a little bit too long to get into it. Like, you're talking a good 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, focusing on them getting to know each other. They go out, they go swimming at the lake and go and get dinner and stuff. Like, there's a good chunk of the movie is spent just them bumming around, you know. And then even then, there's another good few minutes before we get into the hospital, before we get our first scare, things like that. I think it would have been good if they paced it maybe a little bit closer, maybe a little bit tighter. Either way, I gave it a 4.5.
4.5. That's a strong showing for a first film.
It is. I wanted to start off strong at the gate. I want to start off with one that I love, and one that I've seen a couple of times that that I know that I enjoy. Yeah. So there we go. Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum.
Very good.
So that is it for our first episode.
Those are our first two.
That is our double bill for this evening.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed both films.
Mm-hmm.
We will be back next week, where the theme will be family. What do you have for us when it comes to the theme of family?
What do I have for you on the theme of family? Well, originally, the theme that we were potentially going to be going with was parents.
Yes.
Which was what made me first think of this film. But then we changed it slightly to go with family. And it still works with family, obviously. Parents are family. I'm going for another film from actually right around about the same time as Asylum, from the early 1970s.
Okay.
It's one that's certainly a little bit better known and a bit more of a big studio production. Don't Look Now.
Okay.
With Donald Sutherland. An exploration of grief and slow burn horror.
One that I've never actually seen the whole way through.
Neither have I.
So interesting.
Yes.
You're bringing a new one to the table, a new film to the table.
I'm probably going to try and do that where I can.
I'm keen to use this to
push myself to watch some new stuff that I wouldn't have watched otherwise.
Yeah.
And this is one that I've been looking forward to watching for a while and just not gotten around to. So
excellent. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So next week, my pick will be the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, interesting.
What better theme than family to pick the original cannibals? Yeah. It's one that I've not watched for a while. I have seen it before, but I've not watched it for a while. Quite keen to revisit it and see how it holds up, especially looking at it through that sort of slightly specific themed lens. Yeah. The theme of family and cannibals and chainsaws.
Yeah. I'm interested to watch it again. I've seen that is one that I've seen before as well, but I'm not incredibly fond of it.
Yeah, I think it's not really either of our cup of teas. Yeah. Specifically that sort of more gory horror film.
Yeah. It's one that's a lot of people cite as being one of the best horror films ever.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of people think of it as their favorite. So there's clearly something there that makes it good. We're gonna be critical. I'm gonna be fair and rational and objective. Yeah. That's exciting. I think that's a good double bill.
I think that's a good double bill.
Both around the same time. That was
They
what,
are both-
73 and 74?
Yes,
I think.
early 70s, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of classics.
Couple of classics.
Couple of classics to go next week.
Mm.
Well, we hope you will join us again next Friday for our next double bill. Thank you all for listening. It has been wonderful having you here in our little cinema. I have been Fraser.
And I have been Ewan.
And we will see you next week.